Welcome to Liner Notes with Emily Ann Peterson, and today we have with us Mandy Troxel. She is one of my best songwriter friends here in the U.S. And Mandy is the reason why I lived on Orcas Island for 9 months while I was finishing writing my book. And she was at the first songwriting retreat that I attended right after my hand diagnosis. So I thought she'd be a good person to interview for this because she's really seen the whole progression of my life in the last 5 years, which is the same amount of time that this album has taken to come out and be in public. So thank you for joining us, Mandy.
Oh, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
You can tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into some of the songs. You are a songwriter.
I'm a songwriter. I've written kind of on and off since I was in high school, and I took big breaks intermittently. And most recently, about 8 years ago, I started writing again and really have put my all into it in a way that I wasn't before. Or maybe just really feeling how songwriting can connect with other people. It was less about me in my high school stupor or my early 20s it's still about self-reflection, but it's also more about connection than it was back then. So, and I do it part-time. I live on an island, and I'm a single mom of 2 kids that are 12 and 15, and so now actually them being older has afforded me a little more time to focus on things like retreats and stuff like that, or just time to put out, work on an album. So it's one part of a very busy existence.
So a little bit of the backstory was that I was diagnosed with this hand tremor about over 5 years ago. And just about a month or 2 after that diagnosis, I went to a 6-week artist residency that I had been awarded to write and record new music for the cello. But because of all of the grief of this hand tremor diagnosis, I showed up at this arts retreat space and basically was like, hey, gave them my situation, was like, I know I came here. I know that you guys wanted me to come here to write new music for the cello, but that's really the last thing that I feel like I'm emotionally able to do right now. And is it all right if I work on other things? And they were really, really gracious about that. Not all arts organizations would have been so gracious. So I was there for 6 weeks, and I remember showing up for that arts organization on campus there at the Grunwald Guild. It's just outside of Leavenworth, Washington. And I remember one of the staff members going, oh, and while you're here, there's a songwriting retreat happening. You should jump in on that too. And I remember my first reaction was, well, I'm already on a songwriting retreat. Why would I go on a songwriting retreat from a songwriting retreat? I don't think I need that, because I had never been to a songwriting retreat before, so I didn't know how helpful it is.
Right. That was my first one too.
Really?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, now that we're closer, because that was the one I barfed during. Was that the one where I got really sick? The way that I processed the absolute terror of being on a songwriting trip was halfway through, I had to stay in bed because I just started barfing. So there's that part, that fear of songwriting retreats, and can I write a song? Can somebody just tell me to write a song and I can do it? I was so terrified of that kind of pressure, and my stomach's like, well, I can make it so that you don't have to do it. And so I tried that for a day.
So the structure of a songwriting retreat, or at least the ones that Mandy and I are discussing today, are you show up on a
Thursday. I think this was a short one. Yeah.
And then you write a song and perform it on Sunday morning. So You have pretty much just Friday and Saturday, 2 days to write a song. And for for someone who hasn't done songwriting or doesn't write that fast, that can feel really intense.
Right. And if this was during the summer though, there's
it was winter.
Good one. It was winter, so it was a short one because they do offer the week long. And I was going to say before, the interesting thing just about our relationship was, now that I know you better, like at the time I didn't realize what a tumultuous time you were going through. I was just meeting you for the first time too. And then like, you know, a year later when we were talking about it again, I'm like, holy crap, I had no idea that was like the big thing that was happening at that time.
I remember being really quiet that weekend because I was like in a personal place of observance of myself, but I also was like, I had never done something like this before. And usually when I'm encountering something brand new, or if I'm in like a big group environment, like my default is like, let's get quiet and just observe and enjoy the presence of the people around you. Not like, no need to like force any sort of contribution. So what was the song that you wrote during that retreat?
The song that I wrote is called, so the prompt was, we needed to think of high school. Like, she's like, think of high school. And then we did free writes about high school, which we did lists. So she's just, I want like 20 lists, 20 words that remind you of high school. And I was like, oh, great. I came all the way here and now I have to like write a song about high school. Like, this is not what I signed up for. But then basically, and then we took one of the words on our list and we did a free write on those words. And then I had chose penmanship, which was funny because like, who takes penmanship in high school? But that was just one of the words that popped out. And then I ended up, and then she gave us like a title. And so she gave me from our free write and all that happened. And when I say she, I mean Jan Christ, who was the person who was leading and so she gave me Read Between the Lines. And then I wrote a song called Love Between the Lines. And that was also when I was definitely processing my separation and divorce. I don't think I was divorced at that. I was currently separated. And so it was a super cathartic song, which is also why I started barking. But, and I don't sing it. I don't sing it in concerts. It's because it's deeply personal. But I do use it now. I've led a couple of songwriting workshops myself with Jasper Lee Pack and Avery Hill, and we each bring a song and talk about the prompt. And so I use that song just because the prompt was so straightforward, like high school, and then it shows how you can go in completely different directions from where you start. Like, I did not write a song about high school, and it was also very cathartic. And I wrote a song that I don't share with people publicly. And that those songs are also super useful. I think that's a really important thing.
So one of the prompts that there's a couple of things I want to talk about. So first of all, Jan Christ is amazing. And
yes, let's talk about Jan.
Let's talk about Jan. She showed up to the Grunwald Guild campus like on Thursday or Wednesday, like the day before everyone else showed up for this retreat. So she and I had like some one-on-one time. And I just thought she was just some lady that was teaching. I hadn't heard her stuff before. I'd never heard about her before. So she and I like had blank slate, totally slate. And we as staff and then artist residents and faculty, all of us like went to go get burgers and shakes down the road the night before everybody else arrived. And I remember her like pointedly asking me some very like, what I now know as Jan questions, you know, like,
let's just go in deep right off the bat.
They're like really, really intense questions that come from a place of total love, but also a very intense accountability. Let's just call it that. And she basically was giving me a hard time for not registering for her class. I was like a songwriter. And so finally I was like, okay, I guess I'll join. Like, she convinced me basically to join.
Right. But you didn't really consider yourself a lyric writer at that point, did you?
No, I was just kind of noodling around.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really done it much with lyrics that much. I knew that I was a writer, but I hadn't really done much writing before. And I will say this, that my I wrote my first song when I was like in high school, played it for someone, got some really intense feedback, and didn't write ever again.
Oh, like intense negative feedback?
Intense negative
Ah,
feedback. And I it took like however many years. I was like 27 by that time. So it took like over 10 years for
hmm
me to write the second song,
yeah. Yeah,
which
and I
was,
had a time when I took 10, 15 years off when I was receiving some pretty intense critique, and I was just like, this is not fun anymore, kind of thing. So yeah, and then you think you just come back to it clearer, I think so. And I don't think these breaks that we take mean that we're not songwriters. I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but the Iris DeMent quote, where she had that, what was like somewhere between 10 and 18 years of not writing, having an album come out. And heard an interview afterwards, and she said never once did she consider herself to not be a songwriter. She was always a songwriter. Even during that dry period of like 15 years, it was still there. I'm like, you know what? I still was too. I was still observing. It's not just putting the words down, it's how you're watching things, like getting quiet that you do, and observing, and like having
mhm,
the little filing cabinet in your head of putting things away.
mhm.
So, yeah, so you get critiqued and you take a step back, but you're still collecting.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. And I know I've met several people since this retreat that we're talking about who say they're not songwriters, but like I know they're a songwriter. like like there's
Yeah.
no way the comments that they're making or the connections that they're making about life and living, or that they have like a really great taste in music.
Mm-hmm.
Like deep down I just know, oh, you're a
Yeah.
songwriter.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I write songs just so I can hang out with songwriters because they're really fun to hang out because of their observations. And then
Well,
there's
that's
often
true.
so much wit. Like I can find myself saying, "Well, I'm not really a songwriter because I just want to hang out with y'all." But I mean, I actually have moved into considering myself a songwriter. But a lot of it is just songwriters are really fun to
I
hang out
met
with.
I met somebody I met somebody this last weekend, um, who who said that the reason why they started songwriting was because they knew a bunch of songwriters and they were all really cool. So they just,
Yeah,
and that all those songwriters were joining all these songwriting competitions. So they just were like, well, I want to be friends with them. So I guess I have to write songs so that I could be going to these
don't
songwriting.
hang out with these songwriters. Oh, well, they're a step ahead of me already then.
I know. I was like, I think you missed a couple steps, but that's really cool. We laughed about it. Okay, so at this retreat, you wrote The Love Between the Lines, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to go back through. I think that was that was the retreat where I did Night of the Living, I thought.
No, that's because that was the societal uses of songs.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it
we did.
wasn't.
So Jan has these great song prompts, and one of them was she walked us through this different societal uses of songs. So we've got work song,
It's
dance
fascinating.
song, lullabies, historic, political.
Instructional, protest.
Yep.
That's 7 right there. That might be it. I
I
think there
think,
were
yeah.
7. Celebration. Did we say celebration?
Yeah.
It
I
was
think
fascinating. It was when Jan was actually back in college, and so she was being really cerebral about
we love
everything.
it.
And yeah, it was fascinating. It was
So
fascinating.
we all like went around the room and picked one of the societal uses, and I picked
Right.
lullaby and you picked work song, right?
Is it a work song or a protest song? I think because then we also had to tie in something that we were reading about, and it was so I had been reading a bunch about Pete Seeger because he had just passed away, and so I think that I was trying to follow that vein of
Yeah,
protest
that's right.
songs, and also it was historical. No, you know what it was? It was historical storytelling
That's right.
because I used the melody of Pretty Boy Floyd, and then which is a storytelling song talking about like historical this figure, and then did it about Pete Seeger.
So, and then we went around the room. We were talking about like the latest book that we had read.
Yeah, exactly.
This book I had read was this book by Isaac Marion, who's a Northwest novelist. And he wrote this book that was at the time being turned into a major motion picture, which is now out. Both the book and the movie are called Warm Bodies. And it's a zombie love story. And it's so endearing and so compelling, and I just really loved it. I also knew nothing about zombies, and so then Jan announces to the rest of the group, like, okay, great, so now Emily, you have to write a lullaby about zombies, and Mandy, you have to write a protest song for Pete Seeger, and you like we basically
off you go. Off you go.
And I remember being
come back with a verse.
I remember being left like on the couch going like, I know I just read a book about zombies, but I actually don't know anything about zombies. And because I like to research things,
and that's her point. Jan's like, now you research. That's one of the things that Jan drives home every time. Research. So she's like, okay, so you got to research zombies, which I'm really glad that I didn't have to do. I'm not a zombie person.
So I spent 2 days researching zombies, and coming out of the woodwork was this song called Night of the Living, which is a really cool song, and is now
it's one of my favorites. I love that one.
And it's on the Covered in Clover album. So that song on this album was a song prompt from a retreat. Velveteen was also a song prompt that was from the retreat, and that one we had to take a well-known story and write a song from that well-known story, and I picked the Velveteen Rabbit. And
right, and I picked Aesop's fable of the crow and the pitcher of water.
Yes.
And
so such a great one. And then there's also there were some of the retreats I wasn't able to attend in person, but then
she just Skyped her way into it.
I Skyped my way in.
I did that once.
So I would like message Jan and ask her, hey, what's the song prompt for this weekend? I'll write one with you guys. Because I was like in the throes of career change and all sorts of craziness that was happening, and was like, I can't make an extra 4 days out in the mountains happen. So, but I could that was one of the things that I remember. There was a weekend where it was really busy for me, but you guys were on your retreat, and Jan had given me this very pointed song prompt that was like special prompt for just me, and so I knew that if I didn't deliver,
she's gonna give you some shit if you did.
Exactly. And I remember feeling so proud of myself not proud of myself, but I remember feeling so like relieved that you can be a songwriter and be really busy. Like, you don't have to go on a retreat to do all these things.
I found that was one of the traps of the retreat. Was I started, because my life is so busy and it's not all about music. I mean, very few of us get to do that. So I started realizing, I'm only writing, and for a while I was going twice a year. I'm like, I'm only writing 2 songs a year because I'm only writing on these retreats. And then I felt like I had to kind of relearn how to write not in these retreats, because the retreats are nice because you get to put your whole head into it. And the last few songs I've written haven't been on the retreats, and that's felt like a little triumph that I'm like, oh wait, no, I'm going to relearn how to be able to do it just at home too, because the retreats are so fun, but they can become like almost like a little bit of a crutch in a way. Mm-hmm. So,
well, one of the songs that we did, or that I did via, I guess, virtual, was we had to write a song about belonging. We had to write a microbrewed song about
I didn't do that one. Yeah.
And that one is now what I call the hymn of horticultural hymn.
Yes.
and of the title I Know Now, which is out as a single. So, and that basically, I went through and researched all of the local flora and fauna of the areas that I've spent time living in. So the Southeast in Georgia, West in Texas, North Texas, and then also the Pacific Northwest. By that point, I hadn't moved to Nashville, so I would just had those 3 verses. So yeah, it was really fun to like. For me, what I love about songwriting, especially having prompts, is you get a box, and then you have to jam things into that box in a way that makes sense, not just jamming for the sake of jamming it in. But yeah.
It's so helpful to, actually, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other night at a show, and he was saying, we were talking about political songs, and he's just like, I'm just so angry, and I just like, there's so much I want to say, and like he was stymied. He couldn't write the song because there's just so much to be angry about politically right now, and it just felt like too big a task, and I completely relate to that. And like kind of my first political song was basically a song prompt where Kellyanne Conway was referencing this massacre that had never actually happened. And then all these folk singers started uploading to YouTube these the ballad of Bowling Green. So she kept referring to the Bowling Green massacre. So then, that's a great genre of folk music, are these these massacre songs, like under that historical societal uses. And so I wrote a song called The Ballad of Bowling Green, and that was like taking this huge thing, like all the fake news and all that kind of stuff, and how are you going to take that on? And then you just got this like, oh, The Ballad of Bowling Green, like there's a nice little box, and I researched that one little thing, and then I had the song. But like, if I had just like, I'm going to write a song about lying, that there's no way. But then you get that tiny little context, and you can just chip away at it that way.
One of the things I really loved about Jan's retreats specifically is that the prompt existed not for you. It was not the end all be all of the song. So it wasn't like, let's say for the zombie song, The Night of the Living, her requirement was not write me a lullaby about zombies. It was write me a song where you started with a lullaby about zombies.
Yeah. And that's really freeing if you can get your brain beyond that and realize, oh my God, I don't have to write a song about high school like that, because you can get a prompt, you're just like, this is not interesting to me at all.
Right.
But you realize it's just a gateway into what really you need to write about.
Mm-hmm.
That happens all the time. And then you just have to shut off your inner critic and be like, well, okay, this is what I want to write about right now. Like, I didn't think I was actually going to really, like, I didn't come here to write about my divorce in front of all these people, but this is clearly what I'm processing. So I'm just going to, high school to like what really needs to come out. And, and if I had tried to force a song about high school when I was going through this other stuff, it would have not worked. It would have been a pretty disingenuous sounding song. So, the gateway.
So I want to ask you, so we've got, that was like the first-ish couple of years that you and I knew each other, but, you have seen, or you've witnessed a lot of my life that I think a lot of people haven't witnessed, just because I think in the last 5 years, I've gotten good about letting in like a smaller group of people in my life. Probably in a healthy way. I like to think it's a healthy way. But I'm curious to hear from you, like, as somebody who's witnessed the last 5 years of making this album, what did you notice, or what popped out as, I don't know, mile markers, or I don't know.
Mile markers. Well, I mean, your mile markers are so obvious because they literally include geographical changes. And so, so, I mean, for you, you've had this album, and no wonder why it's taken so long to from start to finish, just because, like, if you think about, okay, you had your own major life change in your hands and your direction, and then you have all the, I mean, I think it's okay for me to say this about your grandpa, because you've
Yeah.
talked about it online. Your grandpa taking, moving to caretake your grandpa, and then, like having space from that, and then moving back because it was the end of his life. And then your time here was like this little bubble. So, like, when I think about the mile markers of your career, they're very specifically geographic too. So, like, when you were on Orcas, in the time that we were spending more time together,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was, you were like just in the space, you were finishing your book, you were here getting shit done. Like, you were doing so much marketing stuff, and you were also finishing your book, and that was like taking you away from your album, and you were struggling with making that, like, how do I make that okay? Like, it was okay, but like, how can you um, let all that cool bare naked bravery stuff happen in a book while you also have this unfinished project here that you love? And like, that balance, I know that balance of having multiple projects that you love, that you want to see done. And then you actually introduced me to the phrase emotional hurdles. So then, like, you have all of these projects and they're not getting it done, or like, are they not getting done just because I've got all these great things on the plate? Or am I actually like putting more emotional hurdles in front of myself, so I just can't get them done, So it's like that, struggling to find that balance. I've definitely, but then also just these huge life phases. Like, when you look back 20 years from now, you're like, oh God, that year where, I had to move cross country. I left all my stuff and I was with Poppy, and then like Mandy had to pack everything.
Oh my gosh, you guys, Mandy. So there was this crazy, insane month where like my largest financial client dropped 2 days before I left on what was supposed to have been like a 2-month tour. And so I had to make the executive decision to like cancel the second half of tour so that I could spend that time driving up to Orcas Island from Atlanta, like all the way across the country to get my stuff and bring it back to Atlanta, because it was clear at that moment that I wasn't going to be living in Orcas Island anymore, and my stuff was still there.
Yeah.
So Mandy did like a heroic job of packing my stuff for me. It was the weirdest feeling in the world to be like, oh, yeah, doing whatever.
I've touched all your things.
I know.
It's weird. But luckily you're kind of a minimalist, so it wasn't that much stuff. If you had it was not, it was a big task, but it wasn't a gargantuan task.
It was just like talk about, like, not every friend would have done that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It will forever bond us, really.
Yes, it will. But I just, you're right that this, one of the reasons why the album took so long is because of funding. Yeah. And I, talked myself into, I don't know if that's really the right word, but like working on these other projects that happened between the start and finish of this album actually existed because the album needed to get completed. Like, I knew that, like, if I don't continue to release things, and I also knew that the book could be a potential income generator for my artistic career. And so I was like, I have to release this book. I have to do this podcast. I have to do these things, because the album needs to get out, and I have to self-fund these things. So when an artist, is asking for assistance to help put their project out, like, it literally, and when they say like, it won't happen without you, oftentimes they're very right. Like, it literally won't happen without your $10,
And what you were also doing, like, even beyond the money, you were building this new community. I mean, because Orcas Island is pretty isolating. Like, it's isolated. So,
if you've never been to Orcas Island, it's the it's the northwesternmost island of the continental US. So it's
and it's like 52 square miles, and there's year round there's about 3,500 people that live here, and at the summer it bumps up to like 15,000 or something insane. It's getting a little out of control. So but it's definitely I feel like I know most everybody here at this point. So and it's not necessarily the easiest place to be if you're, you know, early 30s, mid 20s, single. Like it's a fairly isolating place. So so like what you also were doing is you were building this Bare Naked Bravery community. Like you created what you weren't necessarily finding here, just out of the finiteness of this location. And so I feel like that has been something that you've continued to build, and will also support your art, sometimes monetarily, sometimes not, but you're always going to have like that community.
Yeah, it's been really cool that I think, you know, if you are struggling to make your art, or struggling to be brave, or struggling to like this thing that you have a vision for, and you know it can be really good, like it is worth it to stick with it. And I think in the way the world works right now is so based upon immediacy. Like I could literally use my phone right now and order groceries to show up.
and when you lived on Orcas Island, like
that's not possible on Orcas Island though.
No, and the thing that I saw you struggle with here is like, so Emily lived, I'm telling everybody now.
Yeah.
You lived out in the kind of the towards Moran State Park where there wasn't really cell service. Like, did you have cell service?
I did not have cell service.
There was no cell service.
Yeah, I only had a phone if I had internet.
Yeah, and the Wi-Fi was sketchy. And it was this year, like once in a while we have these tough years where just the power goes out a lot. And so we kept, like that year, like we just kept losing power. So you would try to do your interviews and then like the power would go out. And so like the poor person on the other end of your interview, you would disappear, and then you didn't have the cell service to just like text them and be like, oh, the power went out. You just be like, I'd talk with you like, yeah, I just like realized I just the only thing to do was like take a nap. Because there was like really
there's really nothing else
walk the dog, because there was nothing else that you could do. Like your work was just like, okay. And that happens. Like it doesn't happen as much. Well, wait, that's kind of not true, because I mean, it's just we have power outages here. It's just part of island living, and sometimes it's always like somebody can hit a tree in Lopez and we'll lose power for 24 hours. Lopez is a neighboring island because of the way everything's connected, and so you just lose power once in a while.
Yeah. And, so we have emotional hurdles, we have electrical hurdles. So many types of hurdles.
It was financial hurdles.
Yeah.
It was all there. Even in your little isolated spot, the hurdles, they still came to you.
And, you know, it's really interesting, because here we'll like tie this back to songwriting retreats. Like a lot of people who hear that I lived on Orcas Island and was able to use that time to finish my book. Yes. I don't think if I did not have that time on Orcas Island, I don't know if my book would have been produced as fast as it did.
I don't think it would have.
Because I literally had no distractions.
Yeah.
I had like 2 friends on the island, and the power would go out. So then I would just like work on my laptop battery until it died. You know?
Tell me what it is. Then, yeah.
I know. So
no, you got it done here.
There's something really beneficial about like going to a place where the environment facilitates the thing that you want to do.
Right.
I think it's really powerful, but it's also not necessary, that you can still get the things you want to do done in the midst of everything else. So
yeah, something that I've been wanting to do, and I also live in a tiny space with 2 kids and 2 dogs and chickens, and like there's just not a lot of personal space. And seen a couple songwriting friends, and I've gone to their homes, and they just have this little corner or this little room where like they just get to set up their writing, and it's just there all the time. Like they don't, like for me where I write, it's on my kitchen table. So then I like have to shove it aside, or it gets covered up under a bunch of other rubble or anything like that. Oh, just to like, I keep looking around my house thinking like, where's the spot? I just need like enough space for my body to like fit at a surface to just like have that be my writing place, like my writing retreat in my home. Like that's what I would wish for all writers. And I'm saying that somewhat hypocritically because I don't have it for myself yet. But like just that creating your writer's retreat, and then when it's in your own house, you just have to be so disciplined. And I also lack some of that. That's just like, okay, here's my time, here's my space, here's my focus. And,
well, here, like, since moving to Nashville, where I go to a weekly songwriting circle.
Yeah.
Where you bring a new song or a song that's in process. So it doesn't have to be a brand new song. It can be the song you brought last week that you've changed.
That's moved on. Yeah.
I've noticed my writing has changed because just because the songwriting process is not now 2 days. It's now like a longer 3 or 4 weeks. But
interesting.
Have, like, time to like let the songs air out, and
yeah.
gel into like, and I have the immediate feedback from people going like, that chorus feels a little clunky, or is that really what you want to say? Or, those are really great pieces of feedback to have, especially over the course of a period of time. But the thing that's been really helpful for me is the regularity of every week.
Yeah.
I do this thing. And I'm also a part of another online group that does, it's like an invite only group where
you
only have you every month before midnight of the last day of the month, you have to post a song based on the one word prompt that contains the one word from the prompt.
It has to have the word in it.
Yeah. And if you miss, you get to miss 1 month out of 12 months, and if you miss 2, then you get kicked out of the group. You're out.
That kind of accountability I have found, like when I've done, back to that finiteness of this community here, but there are a bunch of songwriters, and we've tried to get together and do, there was a women's songwriter group for a while. You and I were going to make one while you were here, and you were working on your book. What was I going to say? Oh, just that like once a month, always, like I just found, I didn't even really have to push for it because it was only once a month. The weekly one, that's pretty intense. But to just knowing that little deadline was there, to always have it just kind of naturally happen.
Well,
it's
been so great to have that accountability of like, where's your song? Where is it?
Yeah, where is it? So what are you working on? And what does happen around here is when it's such a small town, people know that you're a songwriter. I'm sure it happens in Nashville even. So what you working on? You're like, what do you get that, like there's expectations out there. once you settle into your songwriter mode, the people, they have expectations.
Although one of the first things I noticed in the difference between Nashville and the Northwest is in the Northwest, when you say, oh, I'm a songwriter, you get a response of, oh, that's really cool. What kind of music do you do? And then here in Nashville, when you say you're a songwriter, there's no other question afterwards. It's just like, of course you are. So what kind of haircut do you want?
Yeah. It's fun that it gets to, when you live on a little island and you're a songwriter, it's kind of special. And then if you live on the island, you're a songwriter and you work with preschoolers, you're like a rock star.
Yeah.
So I recommend finding some preschoolers somewhere and showing up with an egg shaker and golden. Just golden.
That's awesome. Well, this has been so fun. I think it's really, really fun to talk about the work that it takes to put an album out, because I think a lot of people don't realize how, like, it goes up online and then you hear, you get to listen to it while you're making dinner or dance around with your kids, and obviously that's wonderful and really great, but it's also really, really fun. I don't know, for me, I really enjoy hearing the behind the scenes stuff. So you've definitely had a unique point of view and perspective of all the work that it's taken to get this album out. So
I'm so glad it's coming out. I can't wait for it to
Yay!
Fall upon the ears of the masses.
July 15th, it'll be available publicly.
Oh, July 15th. Okay.
And then, but if you're on my Inner Circle email list, then you get it a lot sooner. So,
well, I'm on that list. So
I know you are. Yes.
Forward to that.
Thank you so much. And yeah, you're so great. Everybody go listen to Mandy's songs. She has like a really transcendent lyric and melody writing. That's really great. So,
well, thank you. Great. Okay.